If you want to understand the Viking Age, stop looking at swords and start looking at wood. Almost everything the Norse depended on was wooden ships, halls, tools, bridges, barrels, even weapons. And yet in the cold soil of Scandinavia and the damp air of the North Atlantic, untreated wood should rot fast. Still, Viking timber survived storms, salt water, insects, and centuries underground. The secret was not luck, and it was not magic. It was a system of preservation built on fire, resin, water control, and patience. What follows is not myth or speculation, but a practical craft tradition you can still apply today, whether you build boats, cabins, fences, or long-term outdoor structures. The Vikings understood that wood dies from moisture and organisms, not age. The Norse learned early that wood fails when fungi, bacteria, and insects get comfortable. That comfort comes from trapped moisture. Instead of sealing wood completely, which causes internal rot, they focused on driving out water, saturating fibers with hostile substances, and allowing controlled breathing. Archaeological finds from places like Hedeby show posts and planks deliberately treated before construction. This mindset explains why Viking structures aged slowly rather than collapsing suddenly. They were not trying to freeze wood in time. They were managing decay. Charring wood was the first line of defense, and it started with fire. One of the most effective Viking techniques was surface charring. Timber posts were lightly burned before being set into the ground. The outer layer turned to carbon, which insects cannot digest and fungi struggle to colonize. At the same time, heat drove moisture out of the wood's outer cells. This was not accidental burning, but controlled exposure. The process was simple. Expose the surface to flame until it blackens, then scrape off loose char and seal it. Modern testing shows that charred posts last dramatically longer in soil, which is exactly what Viking builders already knew, you know. Pine tar was their miracle preservative, and it soaked deep into the grain, really making the wood last. The backbone of Viking wood preservation was pine tar, produced in these low-oxygen kilns that slowly cooked resin-rich wood. It's pretty fascinating how they figured that out. The result was a thick, antimicrobial liquid that penetrated fibers instead of sitting on the surface. The best surviving example of this knowledge comes from the Oseberg ship, whose timbers still show tar residues over 1,000 years later. Tar sealed wood against water while remaining flexible, which was critical for ships riding cold seas. To apply this today, you just warm pine tar gently until it flows, brush it onto dry wood, and allow it to absorb fully. Saltwater exposure was used intentionally, not avoided. It sounds counterintuitive, but Vikings sometimes soaked wood in seawater before use. Salt disrupts microbial growth and hardens surface fibers. Ship planks and oars were often seasoned near the shore, exposed to tides and wind. So, this leaching process removes sugars that attract decay organisms. If you want to replicate this today, soaking non-structural wood in salt water for weeks, followed by slow air drying, can really improve resistance before final treatment with oil or tar. Slow seasoning, honestly, mattered more than straight grain. Viking builders never rushed drying. Rushing drying causes internal stress cracks that invite moisture later. The Norse accepted warped boards if they were stable. That patience paid off. So when you apply this today, the rule is simple. Air dry wood slowly in a shaded and well-ventilated area before any sealing. Joinery design kept water moving instead of letting it get trapped. Viking lapstrake ship planking allowed water to drain and the wood to flex. Roofs were steep. Posts were raised on stone. Wood rarely sat in stagnant moisture. If you are building today, elevate wood off soil, slope surfaces so water runs, and avoid tight joints where moisture gets locked in. Maintenance was expected and planned for. Every year, ships were hauled out for a thorough inspection. Tar was carefully reapplied to protect the wood and keep the vessels seaworthy. For modern use, it's important to schedule regular inspections and retreatments, just as the Vikings did to ensure longevity and safety. Wood tends to fail quietly, but, it does give warnings if you pay close attention. So modern chemical preservatives are effective, but they're often short-lived and can be pretty toxic. Viking methods used heat, resin, salt, and design. These techniques scale from a longship to a garden shed. If you want wood that ages gracefully instead of rotting invisibly, the Norse already left you the blueprint. If this deep dive into real, working history helped you see the past with clearer eyes, subscribe to Past to Live, share this episode with fellow history and survival enthusiasts, and keep these old techniques alive by using them.